Welcome back. This is the sixth episode of the Painted Privacy video series, and I'm the artificial avatar of Luca Bolognini, European data lawyer and essayist. In this episode, we'll talk about Venice, the Privacy Symposium conference, and reflections of self. First of all, I'd like to remind you of the Privacy Symposium, the international conference I co created with Sebastian Ziegler and held annually in Venice. In 2026, it will be held from April 20th to 24th. Don't miss it. The program is, as always, packed and prolific. All the discussions address cutting edge issues of global scope. We observe outside and beyond our borders, the present, but we do it whilst treasuring historical and cultural traditions and ancient legal roots. The setting helps us with its abundance of symbols. The Scuola Grande San Rocco and the Scuola Grande San Giovanni Evangelista, brimming with Tintoretto's innovative, competitive, and spectacular genius, the Cadolfin Lecture Hall, with the vibrant colors of the Apotheosis of Venice by Niccolò Bambini above our heads, and the enormous wall mirrors all around us, while our thoughts bounce from one reflection to another, then fly out of the windows on waters, returning under the form of wind and light. The Auditorium of Santa Margherita, with its fresco by Antonio Zanchi, pictured in the lower right corner here, depicting the martyrdom of the courageous young girl from Antioch, who paid with her life for proclaiming her Christian beliefs. Consequences of the dissemination of sensitive data ante litteram. The streets of Venice, which during the Privacy Symposium are teeming with privacists from all over, strolling serenely, lost, eager to talk, and open to new perspectives. The joy of meeting in person does the rest. All the participants of the first and second editions of the Privacy Symposium received as a gift a copy of my books, The Art of Privacy and Painted Privacy. I took pleasure in seeing the spontaneous, unfiltered reactions of my colleagues from overseas, amused and curious, and their astonished remarks at this very Italian experiment of metaphorizing the law. I truly believe that what we need now more than ever are privacy and compliance artists capable of transposing complex legal and technological concepts into messages that are beautiful, clear, effective, and touching, and that can be understood and implemented by anyone. Venice. Bridges that unite islands like agreements, pacts, bonds, and links. Submerged streams, imperceptible like dark patterns. Secret gardens enclosed within unremarkable walls, like resources hidden in the deep web. Nizioleti, Venetian street names painted on walls, like tags. The glorious capital of export trade for centuries, the city sovereign state built on water, whose golden rule was cultivate the sea and let the earth be. A reminder of the importance of communing with what is alien to us, exploring the unknown, sconto in Venetian dialect, and not wasting too much energy looking back at the stagnant, marshy inland. Without disowning our traditions and origins, but constantly innovating through cross-fertilization with what is different and foreign. And now, from the reflections of 18th century mirrors and Venetian water, we move on to self-reflections. I have long defined privacy and personal data protection as rights of the self. It is thanks to this fundamental legal arsenal that we safeguard what each human being transmits of their self, willingly or not, to others in tangible or intangible ways. Privacy rights also serve to protect individuals from themselves, or rather from fake or distorted representations of themselves, and from the ensuing consequences. The fact that these are inalienable rights, that is, the individual they refer to cannot renounce those rights, produces somewhat of a paradox in certain situations, akin to Ulysses, who had himself tied to the ship's mast to resist the siren's song. The general principles and rights of the GDPR ward off mystifications, manipulations, and mistreatment of information, even when the person concerned is proactively enchanted and an enthusiastic accomplice in their own deception. In the image you can admire in the lower left corner, you can find a 1903 painting by the British pre-Raphaelite John William Waterhouse with Echo gazing wistfully at Narcissus. To cut a long and notoriously dramatic story short, the nymph Echo is a gossipy chatterbox apropos of privacy, and Jupiter uses her as a lady in waiting to entertain and distract his wife Juno, to keep her from noticing his dalliances. When Juno catches on, she punishes Echo by forcing her to hear nothing but her own voice for all eternity. Then Echo falls for the wrong guy, the young hunter Narcissus, so handsome and egocentric that he is incapable of loving anyone else, not even a nymph who repeats everything he says, flattering at first, but pretty tedious once the novelty wears off. The lovesick Echo pines away, so that all that remains of her in the world is her voice. Meanwhile, Narcissus turns down countless other suitors, including a determined boy, Amenias, who is driven to suicide by Narcissus. I can't help but draw a metaphor between this story and those infamous online challenges that induce children and teenagers to do extreme dares in an absurd attempt to impress unscrupulous bullies who pressure and goad them into proving themselves by doing terrible acts of self-harm. The goddess Nemesis, either invoked by the dying Amenias for revenge or moved by Echo's laments, it is not clear, devises a nasty end for Narcissus. She makes him fall so deeply in love with himself that he dives into the water to embrace his own reflection and drowns. Every myth lends itself to the most diverse and fascinating interpretations. Echo, who is unable to do anything except repeat what she hears, makes me think of fake news and our self-indulgent need to copy and paste and share what we read online. Parrot fashion, without critiquing and without checking. But I also think of the negligent attitude of some consultants and managers who, like lazy paper pushers, do nothing but churn out whatever they read in the legislation and procedures written by the authorities without filtering it with their own assessments and original opinions. Jurists with no identity become deafened and derailed by the echo until they fade away entirely and forsake their role. As for Narcissus, the association is all too obvious with self-love, the fatal reflection of selfies and the mirror bubble of social networks. But this does not happen only online. Professionals and academics are often struck by forms of narcissism when they think, speak, and do research without ever emerging from the theoretical comfort zone of their communities. This risk is even greater in specialist fields, and privacists are by no means immune, myself included. What we need is a continuously growing awareness, a search that is open to external dialogue, in this sense, a non confidential search, to avoid falling in love with our own beliefs and drowning in self reference. Coming back to my initial point about privacy as a means of defense against ourselves and not only against others, I see it as a protection against attempts to exploit and amplify our weaknesses, which induce us to make seemingly spontaneous missteps. In ancient myth, our data controllers could be the gods of Olympus, no state of law in that case, who wantonly toy with the fragility of mortals and other creatures under their sway. By exploiting their defects, they spur them on to self destruction. They manipulate them, they trick them, they wreck their decisions. Cupid literally targets Narcissus with his arrows, as depicted in the evocative 17th century painting by Filippo Lauri, which I won at Sotheby's some time ago, shown in the upper left corner. The parallel seems fitting with the asymmetry of information between those who control online behavioral profiling tools and the hapless users coaxed into cheerfully oversharing and making choices like puppets on a string by the hidden summit of the servers. Thanks for following this sixth episode of Painted Privacy, and see you next time with Luca Bolognini's Artificial Avatar.